Have you ever held a dream in your heart for so long that it feels like a part of you? A vivid, sun-drenched vision of a future you've promised yourself, a reward for a lifetime of hard work. For so many, that dream is travel. It's the promise of cobblestone streets, of unfamiliar languages that sound like music, of mornings spent with a warm pastry and a view of something ancient and beautiful. It's the grand tour you put off for decades, waiting for the freedom of retirement. But what happens when that long-awaited moment arrives, and the body that has carried you through life sends you different signals? What do we do when the spirit is willing, but the physical reality of a long, ambitious trip presents challenges we never anticipated? This isn't about giving up on the dream. It's about learning to honor it with wisdom, to reshape it with a gentle and honest love for the person you are today. It's a journey that begins not at an airport, but in the quiet space of self-awareness. Let's talk about Arthur. At 74, Arthur was a man built of tweed jackets and leather-bound books. A retired history professor, his mind was a sprawling library of dates and empires, of art and revolutions. For 40 years, he had lectured on the glories of Rome, the romance of Paris, and the quiet dignity of the English countryside. Now, he was finally going to walk through them. His plan was magnificent, a 3-month odyssey mapped out with the precision of a military campaign. He'd start in Lisbon, wind his way through Spain, dip into the French Riviera, cross into Italy for a month-long immersion, and finish with a quiet, contemplative week in the Cotswolds. It was the trip of a lifetime, the culmination of everything he had ever studied, ever loved. He spoke of it with a fire in his eyes that his daughter, Sarah, hadn't seen in years. But Sarah, a nurse with 2 decades of experience in geriatric care, saw something else just beneath the surface of his excitement. She saw an itinerary that would challenge a man half his age. She saw the ghost of the boundless energy he once had, an energy he still believed he possessed. One evening, over a cup of tea, she gently broached the subject. "Dad," as she began, her voice soft, "this map is incredible. But have you thought about the sheer pace of it? Changing cities every 3 or 4 days for 12 weeks, that's a lot of motion." Arthur waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. It's invigorating. It's what keeps you young, but is it? Or is there a point where the constant motion begins to dismantle the very joy we seek, a point where the dream of travel becomes a grueling test of endurance?" The first thing we often underestimate is the profound, cumulative nature of travel fatigue. We are familiar with jet lag, that disorienting fog that lifts after a day or 2. But the fatigue that settles during a long trip is different. It's a deeper, more pervasive weariness that seeps into your bones. It's not just about a lack of sleep, it's the constant, low-grade stress of navigating the unfamiliar. It's the strain of lifting a suitcase one more time, of standing in another line, of deciphering a foreign transit system. For a younger body, these are minor hurdles, quickly forgotten. But after 70, the body's reserves are different. Recovery takes longer. A night of poor sleep in a lumpy hotel bed isn't just a groggy morning. It can throw off the entire next day, leaving you feeling vulnerable and frayed. Arthur's plan didn't account for this. His spreadsheet was filled with museum visits and walking tours, with early morning trains and late-night cultural events. He had budgeted for tickets and meals, but he hadn't budgeted for rest. He saw downtime as wasted time, a failure to maximize the experience. Sarah tried to explain it to him using an analogy from her work. "Think of your energy like a bank account, Dad," as she said. "When you were 30, you had a huge savings account and you could make big withdrawals every day, and it would replenish overnight. Now, your account is still healthy, but the daily deposits are smaller, and withdrawals take more out of you. A day of walking the Uffizi Gallery in Florence is a massive withdrawal. The next day, you need to make a deposit, a quiet morning, a nap, a simple meal. Your itinerary is all withdrawals. Arthur bristled at the comparison. His pride pricked. He didn't feel like a man with a diminished account. In his mind, he was still the energetic professor who could lecture for 3 hours straight and then lead a spirited debate over dinner. The idea that he needed to schedule a deposit of rest felt like a concession, an admission of frailty he wasn't ready to make. This is a crucial, internal barrier many of us face. We anchor our identity in the person we used to be, and we resist the evidence that our physical capacities have changed. But true strength isn't about ignoring these changes, it's about adapting to them with intelligence and grace. A truly successful long trip for a senior traveler isn't measured by the number of landmarks ticked off a list, but by the sustained feeling of well-being and joy throughout the journey. Acknowledging the need for rest isn't a weakness, it's the foundational strategy for ensuring the adventure remains a pleasure, not an ordeal. Beyond the physical fatigue lies a far more complex and intimidating challenge: navigating a foreign healthcare system. This is often the risk we are most tempted to dismiss with a simple phrase, "I have travel insurance." Arthur certainly did. He had purchased a premium policy, feeling a sense of responsible accomplishment as he printed out the documents. But as Sarah gently pointed out, insurance is a financial tool, not a logistical one. It doesn't conjure an English-speaking doctor to your hotel room at 3 a.m. It doesn't magically refill a vital prescription you accidentally left in a previous city. It doesn't navigate the labyrinthine bureaucracy of a hospital in a country where you don't speak the language. The reality of a medical issue abroad is one of immense stress and uncertainty. Imagine waking up in a charming but remote village in Tuscany with chest pains. Your phone has spotty service. You don't know the emergency number. How do you communicate the nuances of your medical history, your specific heart condition, the medications you're on, your allergies, to a paramedic who only speaks Italian? This isn't a hypothetical worst-case scenario, it's a plausible event that requires forethought. Sarah sat with her father and walked him through the practicalities. Your insurance is great for reimbursement, Dad, she explained, but it won't help you in the moment. We need a plan. Before you go, we need to get a letter from Dr. Evans detailing your conditions and medications, translated into Italian, French, and Spanish. We need to research the emergency numbers for each country. We need to identify an English-speaking clinic or hospital near each place you're staying. And what about your prescriptions? You have enough for 3 months, but what if a bag gets lost? You can't just walk into a pharmacy in Spain and get a refill for your specific blood pressure medication. Arthur listened, a frown deepening on his brow. This was the unglamorous side of travel, the administrative grit beneath the romantic gloss. He had envisioned himself contemplating Renaissance art, not compiling a folder of translated medical documents. A friend of his, a man named George, had taken a cruise a few years earlier. He developed a severe infection and had to be medically evacuated from a port in Croatia. The insurance eventually covered the staggering cost, but George still spoke of the terrifying confusion, the feeling of being utterly helpless and alone in a foreign hospital for 2 days before his family could reach him. The experience had shaken him profoundly. It's a sobering reminder that our health is our most precious asset, and it doesn't take a vacation just because we do. Preparing for a medical issue isn't pessimistic, it is the ultimate act of self-care. It's about building a scaffold of safety so that you can relax and truly immerse yourself in the joy of your travels, knowing you have a plan for the unexpected. At home, our lives are governed by quiet, invisible routines that form the bedrock of our health. We wake around the same time, eat our meals at predictable intervals, and take our medications with the morning coffee or the evening news. This rhythm, especially as we age, is a powerful force for stability. It regulates our metabolism, our sleep cycles, and the efficacy of our medicines. A long trip, by its very nature, shatters these routines. This disruption is a significant, yet often overlooked, risk. Arthur, for example, managed his hypertension with a combination of medication and a carefully controlled low-sodium diet. At home, this was second nature. But his dream of Europe was a dream of culinary abandon. He imagined spontaneous dinners in Parisian bistros, savoring rich sauces and cured meats. He pictured himself enjoying salty cheeses and decadent pastries without a second thought. He saw routine as a constraint from which he was escaping. But that routine was also his lifeline. The thrill of trying new foods is one of travel's great joys, but for someone with dietary restrictions, it's a minefield. The salt content in restaurant food is notoriously high. The timing of meals becomes erratic. A late Spanish dinner at 10 p.m. can wreak havoc on a digestive system accustomed to eating at 6 p.m. This irregularity extends to sleep and medication. Your body's internal clock, your circadian rhythm, is anchored by light, food, and activity. When you are constantly changing time zones, sleeping in unfamiliar beds, and eating at all hours, that clock is thrown into disarray. This doesn't just make you tired, it can impact everything from your mood to your blood sugar levels. For someone on a strict medication schedule, like insulin for diabetes or blood thinners for a heart condition, this can be dangerous. Taking a pill with breakfast becomes a challenge when breakfast is a croissant grabbed at a train station one day and a leisurely hotel buffet 3 hours later the next. Sarah emphasized this point with Arthur. It's not about being rigid, Dad. It's about being mindful. It's about creating a travel routine you can still enjoy the local food, but maybe you aim for one big restaurant meal a day and prepare a simpler, healthier breakfast and lunch at your apartment. You can set an alarm on your phone to take your pills at the same time every day, regardless of what time zone you're in. This shift from spontaneous indulgence to mindful planning can feel like a compromise, but it's actually an act of empowerment. It is what allows you to sustain your health over a long journey, ensuring you have the energy and well-being to enjoy the last week of your trip as much as the first. The alternative is a boom and bust cycle of exhaustion and illness that can turn a dream vacation into a miserable experience. True freedom on the road isn't the absence of all structure, it's the creation of a flexible, supportive structure that travels with you. We often think of travel's demands as purely physical, but we neglect to consider the immense cognitive load it imposes. A long, multi-city trip is a complex logistical project. It requires constant planning, problem-solving, and adaptation. Think about the mental energy required in a single travel day, navigating a bustling airport, ensuring your liquids are the right size, finding the correct gate, understanding announcements in a foreign accent, and then, upon arrival, figuring out the local transit system, locating your hotel, and communicating with staff who may not share your language. Each of these tasks, while small on its own, adds up. It's a continuous stream of new information and decision-making that can be profoundly draining, especially for an older brain. Arthur, the brilliant professor, had always taken pride in his sharp mind. He loved puzzles and intellectual challenges. He assumed navigating Europe would be a stimulating game. He didn't anticipate that the sheer volume of mundane, logistical puzzles would lead not to stimulation, but to a state of mental exhaustion. This cognitive overload can lead to more than just tiredness. It can lead to anxiety, frustration, and costly mistakes. It can mean booking the wrong train ticket, getting lost in an unfamiliar city at night, or misreading a menu and ordering something you can't eat. For a senior, the consequences of such mistakes can be more serious. Getting lost is not just an inconvenience, it can be a safety risk. The stress of realizing you're on the wrong platform with a non-refundable ticket can spike your blood pressure. Sarah tried to frame this for her father not as a matter of intelligence, but of capacity. Your brain is like a computer processor, Dad, as she said. It's incredibly powerful, but it has a finite amount of bandwidth. At home, most of your daily tasks are on autopilot, using very little bandwidth. Driving to the grocery store, making coffee, it's all automatic. On your trip, nothing is automatic. Every single action, from buying a bottle of water to crossing the street, requires active processing. You're running at 100% capacity all day long. That's why you feel so wiped out, even on a day you didn't walk much. This concept of cognitive bandwidth is crucial. It explains why simple tasks can feel overwhelming on the road. The solution isn't to doubt one's mental acuity, but to simplify the environment. Reducing the number of variables, staying in one place longer, choosing simpler modes of transport, or even opting for guided tours on certain days, can dramatically lower the cognitive load, freeing up mental energy to be spent on what truly matters, absorbing the beauty, history, and culture around you. There's a peculiar paradox to long-term travel. It can be an incredibly lonely experience. You can be surrounded by thousands of people in the heart of a vibrant city and feel utterly, profoundly alone. This emotional risk is one of the most insidious because we rarely see it coming. We embark on our journeys filled with visions of connection, chatting with locals in a cafe, sharing a laugh with fellow travelers. But the reality is often one of fleeting, superficial interactions. You are a transient, an observer on the sidelines of other people's lives. For a few days, this can be liberating. But over weeks and months, this sense of disconnection can become a heavy weight. Arthur had planned his trip solo. His wife had passed away 5 years earlier, and while he was independent, his life at home was woven into a rich tapestry of community. He had his weekly coffee with other retired faculty, his Sunday calls with Sarah and the grandkids, his familiar nod with the mailman. These small, consistent points of contact were anchors of his well-being. On his grand tour, these anchors would be gone. He imagined himself as a sophisticated, solitary traveler, a Hemingway figure observing the world from a cafe table. He didn't imagine the quiet evenings in anonymous hotel rooms, the ache of seeing a family share a pizza and wishing his own were there, or the simple, frustrating inability to share a sudden moment of wonder with someone who truly knows him. Homesickness is not a childish emotion, it's a deep, human yearning for the familiar and the beloved. For an older adult, who may already be grappling with the losses that come with age, this prolonged sense of isolation can be particularly challenging. It can dampen the spirit and color the entire experience with a shade of melancholy. Recognizing this risk is the first step toward mitigating it. It means building new, temporary anchors. This could involve scheduling regular video calls with family, joining a local walking tour or a cooking class to meet others, or choosing to stay in smaller, family-run guest houses where a sense of community is more likely to form. It also means reframing the journey. Perhaps the goal isn't just to see new places, but to find moments of genuine, albeit temporary, connection within them. The adventure becomes not just about geography, but about finding humanity, both in others and in oneself, far from home. One of the most practical but often miscalculated aspects of senior travel is the financial reality. A retirement budget can seem robust, but the hidden costs of traveling with comfort and safety in mind can quickly erode it. The rugged, budget-friendly style of travel that works for a 20-something is often untenable, and even unsafe, for a 70-something. Arthur had meticulously budgeted for flights, hotels, and museum entries based on online guides. But his budget reflected the trip he might have taken at 40, not the one his body needed now. For instance, his plan involved using public transport extensively and staying in charming, centrally located walk-up apartments. He hadn't factored in the cost of taxis on days when his knees were aching after a long walk. He hadn't considered that their charming walk-up meant hauling his suitcase up for flights of stairs, a task that was now a genuine physical struggle. Comfort is not a luxury in senior travel. It is a critical component of health and safety. This means paying a premium for a hotel with an elevator, booking a ground floor room, or choosing a direct flight to avoid the physical stress of a layover. These costs accumulate. The need for a private car service after a late-night concert, the decision to hire a guide for a complex historical site to reduce cognitive strain, or even the simple choice of a more expensive restaurant because it's closer to the hotel and you're too tired to walk further. These are all wise, necessary decisions that were likely not part of the original budget. Furthermore, medical expenses, even minor ones, can be a significant financial shock. A visit to a private clinic for a minor ailment could cost hundreds of dollars out of pocket, even if it's eventually reimbursed by insurance. The cost of replacing a forgotten prescription can be exorbitant. Arthur's daughter, Sarah, helped him create a second, more realistic budget. They added a significant comfort and contingency fund. She told him, think of this as your self-care fund. It's the money that gives you permission to take a taxi instead of the subway, to book a better room, or to skip a planned activity and just rest without feeling guilty about the sunk cost of a ticket. This financial cushion is a psychological one as well. It removes the stress of having to choose between your well-being and your budget on a daily basis. It allows for a more responsive, gentle, and ultimately more enjoyable journey, acknowledging that the most valuable investment you can make on your trip is in your own health and peace of mind. Among the specific medical risks that increase with age and long-distance travel, deep vein thrombosis, DVT, deserves special attention. DVT is the formation of a blood clot in a deep vein, most commonly in the legs. It's a serious condition because if a piece of the clot breaks off, it can travel to the lungs, causing a life-threatening pulmonary embolism. The risk factors for DVT are a perfect storm of long-haul travel, prolonged immobility, dehydration, and age. The hours spent sitting in a cramped airplane seat, a tour bus, or a high-speed train create the ideal conditions for blood to pool and clot. For a senior traveler, whose circulation may already be less efficient, this risk is significantly elevated. Arthur, like many people, had a vague awareness of DVT but didn't understand its specific relevance to his ambitious, multi-leg trip. He thought of it as something that happens on the one long flight over, not as a cumulative risk that builds with each subsequent train ride and bus tour. Sarah explained it to him in clear, simple terms. Dad, think of your veins like rivers. For the blood to flow back to your heart, your leg muscles need to contract and squeeze the veins, like a pump. When you sit still for hours, that pump shuts down. The blood flow becomes sluggish, especially in your lower legs, and that's when clots can form. She showed him the simple, preventative measures that could make a world of difference. She bought him several pairs of high-quality compression socks, explaining how they provide gentle, graduated pressure to help keep the blood moving. She mapped out a simple routine of in-seat exercises, ankle circles, foot pumps, and leg raises. She stressed the importance of hydration, explaining that drinking plenty of water helps keep the blood thin and flowing freely, while alcohol and caffeine contribute to dehydration. Most importantly, she urged him to get up and walk around at least once an hour, whether on a plane or a train. It's the most powerful thing you can do, she said. Just a 5-minute walk down the aisle makes a huge difference. These precautions are not cumbersome. They are small, empowering actions that transform a traveler from a passive passenger into an active guardian of their own health. Acknowledging the risk of DVT isn't about creating fear. It's about fostering respect for the body's needs during the unique stresses of travel, ensuring that the journey itself doesn't compromise the health you need to enjoy your destination. After many long, heartfelt conversations, something remarkable began to happen. Arthur started to listen. He heard the love and concern in his daughter's voice, not criticism. He looked honestly at his own reflection in the mirror and acknowledged the 74-year-old man looking back, a man who was still vibrant and curious, but no longer invincible. This was the turning point. It wasn't a moment of defeat, but one of profound wisdom and self-acceptance. The dream didn't have to die, it just needed to be reimagined. This is perhaps the most important journey any senior traveler can take, the internal shift from a mindset of quantity to one of quality. The old definition of a successful trip, seeing as much as possible, checking off a long list of cities and countries, began to dissolve. A new, more meaningful definition started to take its place. What if the goal wasn't to conquer Europe, but to truly inhabit a small piece of it? Together, Arthur and Sarah spread the large map out on the dining table again. But this time, they weren't planning a frantic, continent-spanning race. They looked for a home base. They settled on a single region, Tuscany. They found a lovely, ground-floor apartment for rent for a full month in a small town just outside of Florence. From this single base, Arthur could take leisurely day trips by train to Siena, Lucca, and other nearby towns, always returning to a familiar bed, a kitchen where he could prepare his own simple meals, and a place to truly unpack and settle in. His 3-month, 10-country marathon had transformed into a 1-month, 1-region immersion. He would have time to find a favorite local cafe, to learn the baker's name, to sit in the piazza and simply watch the world go by without the pressure of having to rush to the next destination. He would have the time to rest when he was tired and the flexibility to be spontaneous when he felt energized. The frantic pace was replaced by a gentle rhythm. This a home base model is a revolutionary concept for many older travelers. It mitigates nearly every risk they had discussed. It reduces physical and cognitive fatigue, allows for the establishment of a healthy routine, minimizes logistical stress, and provides an opportunity to build a temporary sense of community, warding off loneliness. The adventure was no longer about covering ground. It was about gaining depth. It was a profound redefinition of what it means to travel well. In the end, Arthur's trip to Tuscany was the greatest journey of his life. Not just because of the art he saw or the food he tasted, but because it was a trip he took in true partnership with himself. He honored his body's needs, respected his limits, and in doing so, he discovered a deeper, more sustainable form of joy. He learned that true freedom isn't about limitless motion, it's about making wise choices that create space for peace and presence. This is the ultimate lesson for anyone dreaming of travel after 70. Your desire to see the world is beautiful and valid. Your curiosity and spirit of adventure are precious gifts. The challenge is to channel that spirit through the lens of wisdom and self-compassion. It's about letting go of the way you thought you would travel and embracing the way that best serves you now. It's about trading the frantic checklist for the quiet, immersive experience. So, as you plan your own adventures, pause and ask yourself these gentle questions. What does my body truly need to feel safe and comfortable on this journey? How can I build moments of rest and recovery into my itinerary? What is my plan for staying healthy and connected far from home? How can I simplify my plans to reduce stress and increase joy? The answers will be different for everyone, but the process of asking is what matters. It transforms you from a tourist into a mindful traveler. The greatest adventures of our later years are not measured in miles covered, but in moments of genuine connection, with a new culture, with new people, and most importantly, with ourselves. Your story is still being written, and the next chapter can be the most beautiful one yet. Plan with your head, travel with your heart, and honor the incredible journey that has brought you this far. We would love to hear about the ways you have redefined travel for yourself. Share your stories and your wisdom in the comments below. Your experience could be the inspiration someone else needs to begin their own journey.